So welcome to this week's programme. In this week's programme we're going to look at a specific area that affects a number of clay shooters across the world, but also game shooters as well. We're going to look at trigger freeze, and we're also going to look slightly at flinch as well. Okay, what we're going to look at today, we're going to look at trigger freeze or flinch. What we're looking at here, it does have a scientific name. It's called a focal dystonia. And what that really means, it does mean there's a psychological block somewhere. However, in the research studies that we've been doing over the last 2 years, we've been working with a number of shooters. We've been working with shooters who have been shooting maybe for less than a year, and we've been working with shooters that have probably been shooting for 35 to 40 years. Quite a lot of people say that flinch or trigger freeze is to do with recoil. That may be one of the areas, and of course we're trying to look at that at the moment. Some people say it's to do with gun fit as well, to do where your trigger finger is, and also looking at the distances there coming back in. But what we wanted to look at is what is it, how does it impact you, and are there any things that you can do to make that change? So let's look at a classic trigger freeze. So a classic trigger freeze would be target comes out, fingers on the trigger, try to pull the trigger at that point of impact, you can't pull it, there's a sudden jerking movement, gun moves offline or you can't pull the trigger, then you are able to then release yourself and then you're able to pull that trigger. And what is happening there is we're looking here at a psychological block. So the focal dystonia is also seen in other sports. It can be seen in golfing as the yips. You can also see it with tennis players, you can see it with spin bowlers in cricket, and it's a lot to do with fine motor skills. So for us within clay shooting, we're using our trigger finger, and what we're doing then, we need that message sent to that trigger finger. So when we look at that, what is going wrong? So basically our body is made up with a number of maps. I won't get too scientific on it, but those maps and pathways are able to send messages. So a standard normal map would be, I can send a message to my finger, trigger finger, other fingers, etc. But what we have when we get a focal dystonia is we have the message sent to a general area rather than something specific. So what we would have classically is we'd have the message saying for the trigger finger to pull, but what happens when you go to pull on that trigger, instead of just the finger pulling, that whole area pulls. So we actually get that piece there where our hands come together and the whole lot pulls. So you could see from this example here that what we'd be looking at, instead of just a standard pull, okay, what we would see here is we'd see that movement. So it's a jerky movement as the map is locked out on this whole area and not just on that, on the finger there that will obviously be on your trigger. So we're looking in terms of that with our research study to see how can we change that. There are a lot of different things that you can do, but we still want to find out what is specific. Should somebody take more time over it? Should somebody be quicker in terms of their mount? And we're looking at trap, we're looking at skeet, we're also looking at sporting as well. And we're looking at a number of techniques that can be used. I think it is right to say that gun fit does play a part, but I think that plays a part in a lot of people's clay shooting and also game shooting. But one of the key ones though is the messages that are being sent from the brain through the central cortex and are then going to those associated areas. And of course, that is the trigger finger here. So we have started to look at this in much more depth. We're working with a research student at the moment called Jess O'Brien, and she's starting to work now with skeet shooters, and she's looking for a number of subjects to be able to help with that. So we've chosen to use skeet in this first instance because it is very much a control group. So we know the targets will be same on every stand you go to. Yes, weather plays a part, but that's fairly irrelevant in the way that we're looking at it. So we're trying to see, does target difficulty, maybe getting around to station 4, is target difficulty an element or is it something else? From that initial stance where we can actually come out with some proper data in a controlled environment, then we can start to look at the trap disciplines and then we can start to look at the sporting disciplines as well. But we are very much focused on trying to see what causes it and then from that, what can we do? Yes, there are a number of coaches who've started to look at some of these areas, but we want to provide some great fact-based research that can be there. And of course, this is in collaboration with Clay Shooting TV, and we're also working with clayshootingsuccess.com, and we're working together now to be able to put this project together. So what I thought we would do is let's talk to Jess and let's find out a little bit more information. Jess, you're doing a research project into trigger freeze.
Yep.
What are you looking to do with that project?
I'm looking to correlate it to psychological variables.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to use reinvestment theory as the main theory. So how conscious you are of what you're doing, so when you're performing the shot.
Yep.
And then that will lead into the trigger freeze.
Okay.
So then we'll test people who have trigger freeze and don't have trigger freeze, when they get it, what station they get it on, what clay they get it on, and then hopefully their reinvestment score, if it's high,
Yep.
they'll have a high rate of trigger freeze.
Okay.
If their reinvestment score is low,
Yep.
they'll have either no trigger freeze or low susceptibility to trigger freeze. It's about how conscious you are of your motor control and
Yep.
what you're doing. So when you initially first learn a task, you're very conscious of how someone's told you to do it, what you're doing, where you need to look. But then as you get better at that task, it becomes automatic.
Mm-hmm.
Then when you're anxious, you take it back to the stage that you were thinking about the task, which actually hinders your performance.
And I know it's been really difficult for you to try and find too much information on it within clay shooting. It's quite difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, it's difficult. People think it's psychological, some people don't, so it's hard to find information that I'm looking at.
Yeah. And what are you hoping to achieve out of this? It's obviously for your dissertation, so that's obviously going to go towards your honours degree that you're doing. But what more do you think it will be useful for?
For the sport, there's not much information out there, so hopefully we'll add to the information and more to the psychological area.
Yeah, and then for you in terms of this though, you need some subjects, you need some people to help you, both who you think have got trigger freeze or they think they've got trigger freeze, but also people who definitely haven't got it. Yeah,
there has to be people that don't have it as a control group themselves. Yeah.
And if somebody's watching this going, yes, I've got trigger freeze, or no, I haven't, but I'd like to help. In terms of it, what will they be doing? Will they be filling in questionnaires?
Yeah, so you'll sign a consent form, so everything's above board, and then you'll fill out the reinvestment questionnaire, and then when they shoot, fill out your score, overall score, and whether you experience trigger freeze on any station.
And again, it's going to be quite simple to fill in. I mean, people will be able to fill in quite a simple form. It's either an online form, because I think the guys from Dry Fire are helping you out to be able to put something together.
Form,
yeah,
and it'll just be ticking a box, you just typing your score in, and if you experience trigger freeze, can be a tick. Yeah, it's really easy.
And then again, hopefully for you though, as you develop, you're obviously just doing your third year at the moment, but you're hoping to go on to do a master's degree in sports psychology as well.
Yeah, masters at Gloucester.
Yeah, and so hopefully alongside that you'll be doing some more work into trigger freeze and obviously other psychological areas as well. Yeah,
I want to further it into clay shooting. Yeah.
Now for me, I mean, I graduated about 20 years ago now, so now for me it's quite a long time, but it's encouraging, I think, to see the way that clay pigeon shooting has developed, and somebody like you, who you have a loose interest in the sport, because I know your dad shoots, but you've taken a real active interest in the sport and see it as a genuine sport from a psychological point of view.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think any target sport has definite anxiety aspect to it. Yeah, definitely psychological. Yeah.
So I know that we're going to help you out from Clay Shooting TV, but also from Clay Shooting Success. So we're going to put on a contact form on Clay Shooting Success. So if people go to clayshootingsuccess.com, they'll be able to look into the trigger freeze. They'll fill in a form then just to make contact with you, and then you'll be making contact with people from that way, won't you?
Yeah, I'll contact them, any interest, and explain the study in more depth. Yeah.
And you're looking for the study to be finished around April next year, and then probably have the results middle of next year?
End of April I'll have the whole thing finished.
Fantastic.
Yeah.